The crystalline towers of Valerion Prime pierce the violet sky like living monuments of light, each spire reflecting the glow of the planet's 3 moons. Within the ethereal palace, Kael Vorn stood at rigid attention, a towering figure in midnight black-powered armor. Once a special operative of Earth, he now served as a royal protector in an alien world, his battle-scarred presence casting a stark contrast against the ethereal forms of the Valari courtiers drifting past him like celestial fish in a cosmic tide. 6 years of loyal service had earned Kael a rare kind of respect among the Valari, though he remained an outsider. Their shimmering, glass-like skin glistened with internal hues that pulsed in gentle rhythm, curious eyes often lingering on his human frame. The silence of the throne room broke when Emperor Valmir summoned Kael forward. With skin that pulsed with luminescent energy and organic blade-like extensions radiating from his temples, the Emperor was both regal and imposing. As Kael approached the throne, the Emperor announced his reward. Kael would receive the highest honor, a gift beyond measure, his daughter Elira Tamare. She was to become Kael's life partner. The justification was clinical. Valari physicians had confirmed Elira was infertile. A union that might threaten succession was rendered harmless by that medical certainty. Elira entered the chamber like a manifestation of living light. Her pale green skin glowed from within, and cascading strands of emerald hair moved like liquid silk. The garment draped over her body sparkled with crystalline threads, revealing more than it concealed. She held herself with fragile composure, masking the deep personal gravity of the public decree. Kael, drawn into her orbit by instinct and awe, accepted. The ceremony followed Valari tradition, a brief ritual of connection inscribed in light and resonance, one Kael had studied, but never imagined participating in. Hours later, they were relocated to a secluded wing of the palace, shielded from both scrutiny and tradition. On a balcony overlooking the crystalline city, Elira revealed that she had long observed him from afar. His strength and quiet honor had resonated with her in ways she couldn't fully explain. Though her father believed he had solved a political problem, he had unknowingly granted her precisely what she had wanted. 6 months passed. Elira's body began to change. She stood beside Kael again in the throne room, her hand resting on a subtly swollen abdomen. Shock rippled through the imperial court. Valmir's fury chilled the chamber. The impossible had occurred. An infertile daughter now carried a child, Kael's child. The Emperor accused his physicians of failure. Yet Elira revealed the truth. The deception had been deliberate. Her infertility was not natural, but politically convenient. The child, a hybrid of Valari and human lineage, was proof that the species could combine. Valmir's rage erupted. The succession he believed secure was now under threat from an offspring outside pure bloodlines. In his eyes, this was not evolution, it was corruption. He ordered their immediate detainment. But Kael was prepared. As guards closed in, Kael's armor lit with energy. His stance shifted into combat readiness as crystalline weapons charged across the room. Elira remained close behind him, her knowledge of the palace's hidden paths becoming their greatest advantage. The corridors turned chaotic, filled with blinding light and echoed shouts. Energy blasts surged through the air, but Kael deflected them with calculated precision, refusing to fatally harm the guards he once served beside. Following Elira's lead, they escaped toward the atmospheric docks, a high platform of glass and light where shuttles awaited under moonlit skies. One vessel, a small maneuverable transport, stood unguarded. While Elira activated the crystal interface, Kael held the line at the entryway, his armor glowing with kinetic stress, absorbing shock after shock. Their bond, first physical, then emotional, had grown into something unshakable. The child Elira carried was no accident. It was the product of adaptation, resilience, and will. And in the face of a collapsing empire, it represented more than biology. It was a symbol. As their ship rose into the night sky, Emperor Valmir appeared on the launch platform. His crystalline extensions flared in wrath. He hurled accusations of betrayal and impurity. But Kael, retreating into the safety of the vessel, held his ground. The love he shared with Elira was not a disease. It was evolution. Their ship. The Lume slipped past the atmosphere engines, casting iridescent patterns across the void. In the cockpit, Elira piloted them into the stars, while Kael watched over her and the life she carried. What began as a gift sealed in political calculation, was now the spark of a future neither species could have foreseen. The Lume drifted through the star-filled expanse, its hull refracting the glow of distant nebulae like a living jewel. Inside, Elira, Temerae navigated with serene focus, her form poised despite the subtle heaviness of her pregnancy. Kyle Vorn, still armored, except for his helmet, sat beside her in silent vigilance. Her bioluminescent skin had grown brighter with each passing day, a gentle glow that mirrored the rising strength within her. The ship's course pointed them toward the outer systems far beyond Valeri-controlled territory. Their first stop would be a mining outpost nestled inside a hollowed asteroid known among drifters for its discretion. Elira's hands occasionally trembled at the controls, the exertion beginning to show, yet she refused to slow their journey. They needed shelter, if only briefly. Upon docking, the couple secured temporary quarters in the station's shadowed lower levels. Artificial gravity fluctuated slightly, lending Elira's movements a surreal grace. Within the borrowed chamber, Kale recalled the night she had come to his quarters in the palace, wrapped in soft crystalline garb, and the intent to understand human passion firsthand. The memory was no longer just sensual, it had become the origin of something that defied biology and expectation. Elira rested upon the low bed, her glowing hand placed gently over her womb. She confessed a truth, previously obscured by fear. The physicians who had declared her infertile were not entirely incorrect by Valeri standards. Their species required unique reproductive catalysts, ones she had never possessed. Yet Kael's human biology had proven to be the missing key. His genetic makeup had triggered responses within her body that Valeri science had never predicted. Their moment of revelation was shattered by a distant explosion. Kael's systems activated instantly, his armor syncing with the station's low-grade security network. Proximity sensors confirmed the worst royal pursuers had arrived. The Emperor's forces had tracked them faster than anticipated. Elira gathered their few belongings with haste as warning sirens echoed through the metal halls. They moved quickly, navigating narrow corridors tinged in red emergency light. Behind them came the whine of energy rifles and the rhythmic thud of approaching boots. Elira, cradling her abdomen, directed them to a maintenance tunnel hidden near the lower docks. A security override was required, and Kyle held the junction while she worked. When the first wave of guards arrived, he met them with non-lethal force, his reinforced armor absorbing attacks and returning disabling blows without fatality. The tunnel's doors finally slid open and they descended into darkness. The lower docks were a graveyard of shipping drones and neglected vessels designed for automation and minimal oversight. Kale scanned the bay and found a transport vessel, old but functional. Elira stumbled mid-stride, catching herself against his chest as her body reacted to the strain. The child stirred within her, a sign of its growing strength even under duress. Kale carried her aboard the vessel and secured her in the pilot's seat. Despite the tension, she smiled as her strength returned, remarking on the blunt practicality of human technology. The transport systems responded to her touch, awakening with a hum. As the outer doors opened, a barrage of fire hit the shields. The guards had reached them. The vessel lifted just as the outer defenses began to buckle. Shields flickered under impact, not designed for prolonged combat, but Kale's interventions bought time. Elira piloted them through debris fields and glowing dust trails, weaving around floating refuse and outbound cargo. The docking clamps released with a final groan, and the transport vanished into the dark with only faint traces of its passage. Inside, the atmosphere calmed. Elira took Kyle's hand in hers and whispered of their child's strength. Despite every warning, every rule of incompatibility, their offspring was not only viable, it was thriving. She believed now without doubt that humanity's greatest strength was not simply adaptability, but the will to challenge what others called impossible. Their journey continued toward the uncharted sectors where an abandoned medical outpost orbited a storm-racked gas giant. Its affiliation with the Ordos Pact, technically neutral but human-led, offered them sanctuary from Valeri law. The exterior was angular and crude, a stark contrast to the flowing elegance of Valeri design, but it was what they needed, a place far from the Emperor's reach. The ship docked in silence. An encrypted transmission arrived, an old contact of Kyle's from his Earth military days, now a cybernetically enhanced physician named Dr. Reynolds. The man welcomed them into Bay 3, issuing a warning that they were not the only ones being pursued. Inside, the outpost revealed its secrets. Advanced human medical systems had never examined a hybrid like this. The child, now developing rapidly, showed signs of not just compatibility, but optimization, enhanced healing, increased cognitive patterns, even dormant psychic traits. But safety was temporary. Multiple Valari warships emerged from hyperspace. The Emperor's forces had followed them again. Sensors showed they were pursuing another vessel as well, a rebel ship. Rumors of civil unrest within Valari society were no longer whispers. The birth of this child had become a symbol to many not of corruption, but of unity. Dr. Reynolds confirmed this as he handed Kale a crystalline data key, everything he had learned about the child's unprecedented biology. Outside, the rebel ship fought desperately to reach the gas giant's upper atmosphere, attempting a slingshot maneuver to escape. Their efforts would distract the royal fleet for only moments. Kale and Elira had to act fast. Together, they fled deeper into the station's maintenance levels, descending toward a hidden prototype vessel stored under Coalition registry, a stealth ship built for medical transport, but equipped with concealed defense systems. Its dark hull absorbed all light built from materials that blurred sensor arrays. It was the culmination of both human and Valari engineering. Elira, touching the ship's surface, decided its name in an instant. It would be called the Lume, a vessel not only of escape, but of hope. The Lume moved like a shadow across the shattered remnants of ancient battles, its stealth systems rendering it virtually invisible amid the drifting debris. Inside, Kale Vorn studied tactical readouts, while Elira Tamare rested in the dim quarters, her luminous form curled protectively around the child growing within her. The rebel transmission they received en route proved authentic. The vessel under pursuit had been carrying Prince Silin, a distant cousin of Elira's, long dismissed by the Imperial Court for his pro-human sympathies. Now he had emerged as the face of a growing resistance, one that sought integration, not segregation, between Valari and humanity. Their destination appeared like a ghost from the nebula, a colossal rebel carrier hidden deep within the swirling gases of the Alaris Rift, where human and Valari space blurred into one another. The carrier's hull was a marvel of hybrid construction, crystalline Valari scaffolding interlaced with rugged human armoring. Crews of both species worked in unison, evidence of a new order quietly taking root. Upon docking, Kale and Elira were greeted not as fugitives, but as icons. Their escape had already become legend. Prince Silin welcomed them personally, now leader of a rebellion born from exile and conviction. His manner bore none of the imperial arrogance. Instead, his attire blended traditional Valari regalia with human military practicality. Within the carrier's medical bay, hybrid specialists confirmed what others had only theorized. The child developing within Elira was not a biological fluke. It was the first successful union of two civilizations. The DNA was harmonizing, not clashing. Human vitality and adaptability were not merely compensating for Valari reproductive gaps, they were transforming them. Later in their private quarters, Kale and Elira gazed out across the nebula, wrapped in the quiet intimacy of survival. Every brush of skin, every shared heartbeat carried the weight of defiance and transformation. Yet peace was fleeting. Battle alarms tore through the quiet. Outside the viewing portals, the stars blinked with hostile arrivals. Dozens of royal warships dropped from hyperspace, their arrival unmistakable. At their center loomed the Emperor's own flagship, colossal, luminous, and pulsing with the distinct resonance of the Lithar core. Emperor Valmir had arrived to crush the rebellion himself. On the bridge, Salen coordinated a defense flanked by Kael and Elira. The rebel fleet was organized but outmatched. The Royal Armada brought superior firepower in numbers. Yet the tide began to shift when three noble Valari houses powered down their weapons and veered from the Emperor's command. Elira's presence, visible and unshaken, had ignited doubt among the ranks. Transmission lines burned with tension as internal Valari communications churned. Elira began transmitting data directly from the Lume's array, the falsified medical reports about her so-called infertility, the suppressed research on hybrid viability, and the mounting evidence of the Emperor's deception. The truth spread faster than the warships could realign. Still, the threat remained overwhelming. Kael devised a plan, risky, nearly suicidal, but the only viable path forward. The Lume, with its advanced stealth systems, would infiltrate the Imperial flagship. Its reinforced hangar defenses were formidable, but its interior systems had been calibrated to Valari genetic signatures. Elira's presence would allow them passage through critical checkpoints. Though heavily pregnant, Elira insisted on joining the infiltration. She alone could navigate the ship's living architecture. KL, ever the soldier, relented in the face of her unshakable resolve. The fire within her had never dimmed, and the child they carried had grown under the very pressure the Emperor sought to extinguish. The Lume darted through the battle's chaos, weaving between firestorms and collapsing wreckage. Using the nebula's natural interference, they approached the flagship from beneath, targeting a flaw in the ship's ventral blind spot, an opening only a hybrid vessel like the Lume could exploit. Inside, a strike team of both human and Valeri commandos prepared for boarding. Each soldier bore the markings of both species, not just in uniform, but in purpose. They were the vanguard of an idea made flesh, that survival in the galaxy no longer depended on purity, but on unity. The infiltration was swift, surgical. KL led from the front, absorbing enemy fire through reactive plating, disarming without killing. Behind him, Elira interfaced with the crystalline corridors, guiding the team through shifting passageways designed to confuse intruders. Her hybrid physiology granted her control even Valeri elite guards could not anticipate. Meanwhile, broadcasts from the Lumai continued to pulse through the Valeri networks. Evidence of the Emperor's crimes, his suppression of interspecies, compatibility, research, the manipulation of his daughter's conditions spilled into the minds of every noble, every fleet commander, every citizen watching in silence. Across the battlefield, weapons began to fall quiet. Warships hesitated. Commands went unanswered. Valeri captains weighed oaths against truth. At the heart of the Imperial flagship, Kale's team reached the central chamber. But Emperor Valmir had enacted his final contingency. He had merged himself with the Lithar core, fusing organic flesh with crystalline power, transforming into a towering being of mineral and rage. The confrontation to come would be not just physical, but symbolic. One man born of Earth's willpower, and one ruler forged by fear of change, would decide the course of two civilizations. Within the pulsating heart of the Imperial flagship, the atmosphere shimmered with unstable energy. The Lithar core, now fused with Emperor Valmir's body, illuminated the chamber with violent pulses. He had become something beyond Valeri, a monstrous fusion of consciousness and crystalline machinery designed to destroy rather than to rule. Kale Vorn stood at the forefront of the strike team, his armored body dwarfed by the mutated Emperor towering before them. Yet he did not falter. His tactical mind analyzed the massive form, how the crystalline network interfaced with organic nerve clusters, how the central conduits fed from the core's unstable lattice. Around him, the hybrid commandos tightened formation, awaiting their moment. Elira Tamare, guided by instinct and inherited knowledge, deciphered the flow of power within the chamber. Her unique genetic structure, harmonized between Valeri and human, allowed her to sense vulnerabilities in the network. Her presence caused fluctuations in the Lithar core's rhythms. It reacted not with rejection, but with confusion. The battle began in a surge of energy. Valmir unleashed tendrils of luminous force, shattering the platform beneath their feet. Kale moved with calculated efficiency, launching coordinated strikes at the matrix junctions Elira identified. Every rupture sent shockwaves through the chamber, destabilizing the Emperor's fusion. His roars, mechanical and primal, echoed with desperation. Outside, the battlefield shifted in real time. The rebel fleet, emboldened by the unfolding broadcast, pressed their advantage. House after noble house disengaged from the royal formation. Prince Salen directed maneuvers with surgical precision, turning chaos into momentum. The tides of loyalty bent not to tradition, but to truth. Back in the central chamber, Valmir's form flickered. His blade-like extensions lost cohesion as his energy signature destabilized. But even in collapse, he clung to his conviction. To him, their child Kael and Elira's son was not a future, but an abomination. Yet Elira moved forward, undeterred by the storm, her pregnant form radiating steady light. The Lithar core began to respond. Drawn to Elira's presence, the living energy patterns of the chamber shifted. Her hybrid nature bridged the binary, a union the core could not reject. She placed her hand on the energy lattice and stabilized the surrounding chaos. The ancient Valeri technology, once built to exclude foreign bodies, now resonated in harmony with her. Kale stepped forward beside her and disengaged his weapons. The chamber, pulsing with potential collapse, began to quiet. In this moment of stillness, what the Emperor could not destroy with violence, the bond between two beings had begun to transform. The energy that had once fueled destruction now pulsed with understanding. The Lithar core. Centuries old, encoded with rigid Valari design, now received a new command, not through protocol, but through feeling presence and proof. The monstrous form of Valmir began to retreat. The crystalline mass slowly dissolved from his body, leaving the Emperor once again in physical form, aged, diminished, and changed. The extensions that once marked his dominance now hung with residual shimmer, a permanent reminder of his near dissolution. Before him stood the daughter he believed broken, the soldier he believed beneath him, and the unborn child he had tried to erase. But the moment did not belong to destruction, it belonged to Genesis. Elira doubled over as her body responded to the shifting energy. The child she carried, strong, responsive, attuned, was ready to be born. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the Imperial Medical Bay was transformed into a hybrid facility, drawing on both Valari and human technologies. The child's birth was not just a medical event, it was a galactic moment. Orien Voran Teray was born under glowing light and charged stillness, his skin glinting with subtle patterns that shimmered between soft human tones and translucent crystalline lattices. His eyes, golden and unblinking, carried the dignity of Valari nobility and the resolve of Earth's fiercest warriors. Emperor Valmir, now silent and marked by his failed transformation, looked upon the child. The change had taken root in him. No longer a monarch bound by fear, he saw for the first time what had emerged from the path he once condemned. This was no abomination. This was evolution made manifest. The grand halls of Valerian Prime had never glowed brighter. Crystalline walls, once echoes of a divided empire, now shimmered in dual tones, blue-white Valari light, laced with the soft amber warmth of human influence. The celebration was not simply of birth, nor of peace, but of something more profound, the formal presentation of an heir born of two species. Kael Vorn stood in ceremonial armor, the matte black surface now inlaid with patterns drawn from Elira's lineage. The markings curled across the plates like vines of refracted light. Beside him, Elira Tamaray adjusted the intricate wrappings around their newborn son. Orien Vorn Teray's skin shifted between patterns with each breath, sometimes human and warm, sometimes radiant and translucent. His eyes glowed steadily, reflecting both courage and grace. The child's existence had captured imaginations across both empires. Once a political impossibility, he was now a living bridge between two civilizations. Kael recalled the moment he first stood in that same hall, when Elira had been presented to him as a ceremonial offering. What had begun as a gesture of loyalty had transformed into rebellion, revolution, and ultimately rebirth. Elira, dressed in royal attire that revealed her confidence without apology, embodied the very challenge to tradition she had once been bound by. Her posture was deliberate. She was no longer a pawn. She was the mother of the future. The chamber resonated with the ancient tones of a Valari crystal hymn, joined now by human orchestration strings, chords, and layered resonance forming a new harmony. Together they filled the chamber with something that had never before existed, a shared song. Emperor Valmir appeared once more before the assembly, his body still bearing crystalline scars from the failed fusion with the Lithar core. His voice, no longer sharpened by fear, addressed both species. He acknowledged the transformation he had once resisted. Where he had once tried to control succession through perceived infertility, he had instead given rise to the future itself. The child born of Kael and Elira was not merely heir to a throne. He was the embodiment of evolution. Proof that love, biology, and culture could synthesize into something greater. Prince Salen carried the crown forward. It had been reforged, no longer a pure crystalline circlet, but a hybrid of Valari design and human engineering. It hummed softly, as if aware of its own symbolism. As he approached, Orien reached out instinctively, and the light in the hall refracted around his tiny fingers. Gasps echoed through the crowd. In the aftermath of the presentation, Kael and Elira returned to their quarters, where the stillness of night settled around them like silk. They watched Orien sleep in a cradle designed by both species, a marriage of comfort and protective geometry. Outside the window, the skies danced with twin luminescence. Kale remembered how far they had come from the quiet moment when Elira first approached him in the palace to the fire-lit escape through the tunnels to the chaos of rebellion and the shattering of ancient structures. Every touch, every breath, every risk had built toward this. Elira rested against him, her form radiant, even in exhaustion. She traced the subtle curves of his armor, a pattern she had memorized through years of war and intimacy. Kael responded in kind feeling beneath the rhythm of her pulse, the strength of a queen and the warmth of a woman who had risked everything. Beyond their embrace, the Empire watched and began to change. 2 decades had passed since Elira Tamare had been gifted to a human soldier. What had once been a symbolic gesture of obedience had over time unraveled the foundation of an entire civilization. Now within the radiant Grand Hall of Valerian Prime, a new celebration began, not of submission, but of sovereignty. Prince Orion Vorn Teray stood before the assembled dignitaries, no longer a child, but a symbol fully formed. His body reflected perfect fusion, Kael Vorn's commanding stature wrapped in skin that shimmered between human pigment and translucent Valeri light. The features of his mother and father balanced in every line of his face. The precision of earth met the grace of the stars. Kael stood nearby, his ceremonial armor bearing dual insignias, those of the Royal Valari Guard and the new Unity crest forged in the years following the integration accords. Though his hair had begun to silver, his frame remained unyielding, a result of the advanced hybrid treatments born from the scientific cooperation between human and Valeri minds. Elira's presence beside him remained magnetic. Her skin now bore crystalline fractals that grew naturally with age, a mark of status once reserved for pure-blood Valeri elders. She had become more than consort, more than queen. She was legend embodied, the root of an empire's transformation. The hall echoed once more with harmonic resonance, but now each note carried a different meaning. Human tones had been woven into the crystalline frequency of the Valeri song. The two species no longer coexisted in tension, but in rhythm. Emperor Valmir, more crystal than flesh, stepped forward. His voice was slower now, textured by time and the memory of collapse and rebirth. He spoke without grandeur, offering not a speech of power, but one of surrender to change, to future, to truth. He admitted what once would have been unthinkable, that his attempt to manipulate fate through tradition had instead led to salvation through integration. As Orion knelt, the crown was lowered onto his head. It glowed softly, its dual heritage components humming in perfect synchrony. Around the hall, families stood bearing children of both lineages. The scandal of one generation had become the norm of the next. Later in the quiet privacy of their quarters, Kael and Elira watched the orbital displays above the capital. Hybrid ships danced in elegant formations, their propulsion systems a marvel of combined engineering. Above them stretched the architecture of a future their love had once dared to imagine. Elira traced the lines of Kael's body through his formal attire, smiling with familiar fire. They had built more than a family. They had created a template for an age. Orion arrived quietly with his chosen mate, a hybrid from the first wave of hidden families who had once feared exposure. Now they stood tall, bringing word that the Integration Council had approved an expansion into the Outer Rim. Colonies founded on union, not separation, would extend their reach across the stars. Fertility rates among hybrids had exceeded all projections. The genetic bridge created by Kael and Elira was replicating across systems. What once had been a miracle was now becoming a new species, an evolution not of destruction, but of synthesis. Even Emperor Valmir, once the embodiment of resistance, had transformed beyond recognition. The crystalline growths that had nearly consumed him now shimmered in the light as a mark of redemption. In his grandson, he saw not a threat, but the continuation of legacy under new terms. Kael and Elira stood on their private balcony that night, watching the spiral arm of the galaxy curve toward the horizon. They had lived through uprising, exile, war, and rebirth, not as rebels, not as rulers, but as catalysts. A single decision, the acceptance of a gift thought broken, had reshaped the destiny of billions. And above them in the starlit silence, a new empire bloomed. Not built by conquest, but by love that refused to obey the limits of its time.